Hi, everybody. This is David Nevins for Citybiz List, and welcome to our program today. Our guest today is Jovani Patterson, a resident of Baltimore City, a community activist, a business person, but a gentleman who also has a very long title, Chairman for the People for Elected Accountability and Civic Engagement. Jovani, how did you get that title, and what's this organization all about?
The concept of term limits came about as well as recalls, and we wanted a way to, get some of these issues on the ballot. This is things that have been going on in the community, so we formed a ballot issue committee. I called it People for Elected Accountability and Civic Engagement, better known as PEACE. And I, at the beginning earlier this year, became chairman of that organization to kind of spearhead this initiative.
So I know that your primary initiative right now, culminating very shortly this coming election day, is about attempting to get term limits passed in Baltimore City. I know you and your colleagues collected, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, 20,000 plus signatures. So why are term limits so important? And it does strike me that it's interesting because it's the one thing, maybe there's another thing, but I can't think of it at the moment, that Democrats, Republicans, independents, by overwhelming majorities, all agree that term limits are a good thing. So tell us about what you're doing there.
Well, I think, the first thing that you said, it's not a particularly partisan issue. It's really just about creating good, healthy government. It is something that everyone can agree on. In my view, I think it's really just a non-political issue. It's just how do we, get our government to be more effective, more responsive. But really, it's just that returning power back to the people of Baltimore, encouraging new ideas from fresh faces. I think it was Barack Obama who said it best when he, was leaving office. Many of them wanted him to stay president for life or, what have you. But when asked about term limits, he said, what happens with governments is they become stale. They no longer reflect the people. So even Barack Obama, who, some claim as America's best president, he said, hey, term limits are effective.
Yeah, and it seems to me that so first of all, term limits are not a new thing. They will be new to Baltimore City, assuming the voters pass this. But they're all over the country. Is that not correct?
Yeah. So 9 out of 10 of the largest U.S. cities do have term limits currently in place, but they're not new to the country. I mean, even our federal representatives, president has term limits, but they're also here in Maryland, our governor has term limits, and quite frankly, if it wasn't for term limits, the next Maryland probably wouldn't be having the opportunity to have the first Black mayor. Black governor of the state. So there's some other things there, but even our surrounding counties in Maryland and surrounding Baltimore have term limits.
So term limits, and you can, I believe it's question K coming up on the ballot, and you want voters to vote yes or okay on question K, right?
Absolutely. Vote okay on question K. We definitely want, an affirmative vote on question K. So yes.
So, Jovani, term limits, it's not about upsetting the apple cart or bringing a less experienced government to Baltimore City. It seems to me I don't know that it was ever intended that politics and becoming elected to office would become one's career.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, public service was supposed to be just that, public service, and not a career. And some of the opponents of term limits say, well, now we'll have inexperienced politicians trying to run the city. Well, I have, a couple of issues, with that. One, if you don't know how government works before getting into government, that's a particularly major issue. And what does that say about the level of transparency that we have in our existing government? If the only way to find out how particularly Baltimore City government is running or operating is to actually be in government and take years to figure it out, then that means our government really hasn't been serving the people, but really serving itself. And also, I just like to think of employers, the voters, the taxpayers of Baltimore are the employers. And if you think of, let's say you start a McDonald's or, any other kind of company, a software company, if it takes, your employees 8 years to learn how to do their job to become effective, how long will you keep them employed? And we as voters really just have to start thinking about that and thinking in those terms. Like those are the people, the elected officials are the people that we employ. And if it takes them 8 years to figure it out, I think that's a major problem.
Maybe we're electing the wrong people if that's the case.
Absolutely.
And Jovani, the other thing, you and I have spoken before that just to clarify some of the opponents to this, and there aren't very many opponents, at least that I run across. So, we'll see what the voters have to say. But some of them were, I think, initially a bit confused over the fact that this still lets people run for multiple offices and if successful, could serve in office as long as 24 years. Explain that, if you would.
Well, it's actually up to 32 years because of the 4 positions. So where some of the confusion came, and maybe rightfully so, there's a bit of ambiguity, is like when you're putting these things out, you try to be brief, you try to, be concise and clear and to the point. So the full language wasn't on, the ballot, wasn't on the summary of the petition. And that same thing happens with the summary that goes onto the ballot. Now that summary was approved by Board of Elections as accurately explaining. But when you read the full text of the petition, it does not prohibit those seeking political office to run for the quote unquote next office. So, as an example, you could run for city council, serve 8 years, and then run for city council president, serve for 8 years, then run for mayor, serve for 8 years, and then run for comptroller and serve for 8 years. And that's a 32-year span. You're just not sitting in the same office with the same title, doing the same things over that career. And also, it's 8 years within a 12-year period. So hypothetically, you could serve for 8 years, take a 4-year break, and then serve for another 8 years if the voters elect you to do so.
So this is hardly a draconian proposal, question K. It seems like it's just allowing Baltimore City to essentially catch up with some of the good government rules that I think, what did you say in our last conversation? 9 of the 10 largest cities in America already have term limits?
Yep, 9 out of 10 largest cities. I mean, we're talking about New York, we're talking about Los Angeles, San Diego, Austin, Texas. Like these cities already, have it in place. And, some of them have smaller governments than Baltimore City and are twice the size. So, that's another story. But but they already have term limits in place, and these cities aren't imploding. They're not in financial crises or anything like that, as some of the opponents of term limits say. They're doing just fine.
I think in a previous conversation, Jovani, you said something that sort of cracked me up, but is essentially very true. That of course these positions of mayor and city council member, they carry substantial salaries, and they never did before. That is decades ago, and that's why a number of the officials who are elected to these positions want to stay and stay and stay. And you talked about we wouldn't even need term limits if what?
Yeah, if these were unpaid positions, we probably wouldn't need term limits. Because people want to do their jobs and get out, and they would really see it as public service versus a job / career.
So I think you've said you've summarized this real well, Jovani. So thank you. But I think you've said that One of the things that term limits allows or fosters is just new ideas, creative ideas, better ways to run the city, and really encourages young people to become involved in politics as well, right?
Absolutely. So the CE in the name of our organization is civic engagement. And I think that's what's severely lacking right now in our local government. I mean, you'll hear a lot of our politicians say, "Well, most people don't know how government works. They just don't know what goes on in the halls of government." And I think that's an issue. As you create term limits, as term limits gets implemented, yes, there's going to be opportunities for fresh faces, bold new ideas that reflect what's going on right now to solve the issues of crime, education, the opportunities within our area, and quite frankly the population decline. We need some new ideas versus the same old ideas that have gotten us into these particular situations.
So just in closing, I know you and your colleagues and your committee has been at this for many months now, and you collected, I think, as I mentioned earlier, almost 22,000 signatures of Baltimore City voters, but that's not enough to pass it, right? That was just enough to get it on the ballot, and the election is coming up in just days away. So give me kind of a summary. What do you want people to do? This is question K, and what will be the benefit to Baltimore City if question K passes?
So as with everything, I encourage everyone to do their research, look into it. But ultimately, I hope you do come to agree with us and say, hey, we need term limits. Let's vote okay on question K. Again, this is about healthy government, creating those healthy guardrails, bringing in fresh faces, fresh new ideas, bold new ideas to help move our city forward. And ultimately, it's about bringing power back to the people and removing it from the hands of City Hall. It belongs back into the hands of the people. We need that leadership, and I think the best ideas are still out here on the streets of Baltimore.
Jovani, thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Nevins. David.
It's my pleasure. Yes, call me David. Anyway, this has been David Nevins for Citybiz List. Thank you for joining us today. And if you believe and support term limits, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, Jovani Patterson is asking you to vote okay or yes on question K in the upcoming election. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.